Peggy 12.
Hey guys, this is Michelle and Chloe, and we are sitting here with Anton, Will, and David from the Firaxis team. This is an awesome panel about civilization. This is so exciting.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. Yeah. It's so exciting.
Yeah, we just announced Civilization Beyond Earth, our newest product for the Civ franchise, and couldn't have gone better. Like, the reaction was amazing. It was really awesome.
Now, Will, you talked a little bit about the great mistake. Can you talk a little bit more about that with us?
Well, no one is really sure what the great mistake was. Because of this dark age that followed, there was this period of, well, sort of a historical blackout, really. No one's really sure. But it was some conflict that caused a massive humanitarian crisis, which destabilized the nations of the world. So when you start Beyond Earth, the nations that you get to choose as your sponsor are different. They're sort of like what we have today, but are not exactly the same, and the cultures have mixed, and it's really cool. We had a lot of fun designing it.
Yeah, and then when you land on the new alien planet, you have only what you brought with you. And other civils show up a few turns later, maybe 20, 30 turns later, and you all got to kind of figure out together what this place is like and how dangerous it is and how you're going to survive, and then eventually who's going to win.
So what kind of dangers are the players going to face?
Well, alien horrible creatures to start with. It's a fully alive planet that it's got all the ecosystems and life forms and food chains and some pretty nasty beasts out there that aren't really going to be your friends, especially if you start trying to tear up their homes and build farms and stuff.
Yeah. Talking about the different factions that we have, different factions are equipped with different ways to be able to interact with these beasts.
They start off with some advantages, yes, and then a lot of what you find that you want to do with them is based on what you learn when you're there. So you can shoot them, and that works pretty well. Yeah. You can shoot them and study them, and then maybe you can learn either how to shoot them better or use them for your own. Like, you can make them part of your own army and learn to kind of live with them. There's lots of opportunity, and it's not just the faction that gets to do this. Anybody can do this. Yeah, right.
How are these affinities going to affect gameplay?
So the primary way, I guess there's two ways that they affect gameplay, and one is in the tech web. So instead of having a traditional technology tree as you might expect in a Civilization game, we have a technology web where you start at the beginning and kind of like in the middle of this spider web of different technologies. You can kind of explore in all these different directions. And depending on what you choose, you start developing progress towards these three affinities. And that progress not only kind of guides your decisions on the tech web, but it also influences the type of units that you get and the upgrades that they get. So if you go, if you focus on supremacy, for example, your army, instead of being just humans, will start to have cybernetic implants, and they'll be kind of these giant robotic army towards the end of the game when you're very advanced. And it's really cool to see on the battlefield.
Do you feel like you guys took some inspiration from other games?
Oh, absolutely. You know, well, at the top of the panel, we mentioned Alpha Centauri, of course. That's sort of the elephant in the room, right? And we're huge fans of that game, so naturally, we got a lot of inspiration from that. And just the entire Civ franchise over the 20 years it's been around, you know, we built on that. We really understand Civilization. Our team understands Civilization, and our fans, you know, are a huge help there too.
What was the inspiration about the introduction of infinities? Where did that come from?
Well, I mean, it's a story about the future, which is a story nobody knows yet, right? We wanted a way for the players to kind of predict where they could go, you know, choose from among a variety of options that they can kind of tell already what that might be like. And so we picked three that we think are really evocative. One of them is super technological and robotics. Everybody likes robots. One of them is sort of super organic and genetic modification, and so the planet itself is really interesting, and if you like that, you can go that direction. And the other is kind of neither one, but comes along with its own interesting benefits and harkens back to really classic, interesting things about Earth history. So it's got a very kind of classical, valiant look to it, like knights and Roman forums way about it. So those are the sort of the themes of the affinities, and then they represent a way that you can play the game kind of and end up in a place that you already tell when you start the game will be fun.
Where did the genesis of that come up from? I know the two of you guys have been friends for a very long time. Was this something that you guys talked about ahead of time?
I mean, this whole game is something that we've it's been rattling around in our heads for a while, and we've been talking in the years of our directorship for a while at Firaxis. We finally got to do it. when we started the product, we took a huge list of sci-fi books and we carved them up and we each read them. And a lot of these post-humanist ideas, the harmony, purity, and supremacy ideas, the victory conditions, things like that, are sort of inspired by the great works of science fiction, and also, real life scientists. So Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, these guys who are the evangelists of science in our culture today. Obviously, we draw a lot of inspiration from them.
I love that you actually quoted Carl Sagan in the panel. That was brilliant. That is so amazing.
Can I ask a question about the timelines? So how are the timelines in space going to differ from the timelines in historic Earth?
Yeah, so the game starts about 200 to 250 years after kind of modern day. And the timeline continues like, you're used to in a civilization game. You kind of start out in 4000 BC in the Stone Age, and things take longer to do in the Stone Age, so each turn kind of takes decades. And then it kind of like shortens as the game continues. But our game, it's 1 year every turn. And it's kind of like, everything happens very fast, but it's still that same kind of turn pace that you're used to as a civilization player.
And so do you feel like when you're building up civilization on Earth, are they going to parallel in story-wise what it's like in space?
I'd say yes and no. I mean, there are definitely some common elements, like you start out with just like your first city. But I think, I suppose, like I worked on Civilization 5, the 2 expansions, and so that's something very familiar to me. So compared to that, Civilization 5, you start out with one city and you kind of expand and you found more cities, and you kind of run up your borders against your neighbors relatively quickly, and then it's about kind of combating each other. But in Beyond Earth, you're really interacting with the planet from the very early game, and so it's about seeing these alien life forms that are in your way and how do you deal with them, and the strange resources that you find, and like whether you can tap into them or whether you have to do something else. So it's really about the planet, and it feels very different. It's something very satisfying for me, especially coming from Civ 5, to be playing Beyond Earth now.
Yeah, that was something they were talking about in the panel, is for you in particular, you didn't really have as much constraint on this as you have in the past with the historical constraints that you've had. This is kind of something that you've been able to build on imagination.
Yeah, and I think it's a very different feeling game because of that, and that's partially because of the new systems that we've been free to put in, and also because of the fun fiction and the fun world that we've been able to really bring to life with all the art.
Can I ask what Sci-Fi books you guys read in order to prepare for this?
It's going to be quite a long list. We don't have enough time. But I personally read, I went back to some of my favorites with Orson Scott Card and Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune, of course, and then I read some new stuff by a guy I hadn't read any before, Greg Bear, who I'm sure many sci-fi fans would say, oh, you should have already known about him. Well, I know him now.
Yeah, same here. I mean, the Asimov, of course, go to the source, right? Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, Dan Simmons, some of the Russian authors that have written some great stuff in the 60s, like Roadside Picnic and Solaris. These are just really imaginative. It's a great, we got a deep bench, right, of creative material to draw from. And we think that if you're a sci-fi fan, we've put a lot of little things in there for you to find. So
yeah, and for me, I focus mostly on Dan Simmons and Werner Vinge. Those were the 2 authors that I kind of read most heavily for pre-production. But one of my favorite books was Asimov's Foundation trilogy growing up. So that's
Chloe and I were both completely blown away by the artwork.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The artwork for this is just gorgeous.
It's very reminiscent of you were saying sort of a 1970s sort of print, reminded me of 2001 Space Odyssey. And I like you saying all these books and these authors, it's very clear how passionate you are about this game. So I'm really excited to see what you guys do with it. I know the fans' reaction was insane.
Oh my God, they were so
How did you guys feel?
How
did you guys feel about that?
It's such an honor for us to work on this franchise. I mean, we feel the weight of that. The 20 years of Civ, the Sid Meier's name above our game, it's a big deal. And to see the fans react the way that they did today was just so gratifying. It makes it all worth it.
I mean, you heard in them kind of like how we felt when we got to do it, when we were told we got to do it. Because I grew up on these games. I love them as much as they do. And so it was just an unbelievably special moment to see all of that kind of vindicated in one great roar. Yeah.
I have another question for you guys about the quests. Let's talk a little bit about quests.
The quest system, as we mentioned in the panel, is this. It's kind of a vehicle for us to deliver some fiction to the player. And the analogy that we used in the panel was, we deliver it in the way that Magic the Gathering does, where each card has this little bit of fluff below it, and that's your window into that world. You're not really sure, exactly what's going on. You as the player fill in the gaps, and we really do believe that our players are way more imaginative than we are. We're not interested in telling them a story that we've written for them. We're interested in them building their own. And the quest system is something that reinforces that idea. Civilization in general, if you talk to any Civ fan, they're going to tell you about their experiences, their stories. Gandhi did this to me, and then Genghis Khan came in here and did that. And it's the stories that they tell. And we wanted to build systems that help players tell their own stories.
I have one last question. What aspect of the game are you personally most excited about? We'll start over here.
I would say for me, the Orbital Units. That's something, especially I've been working on, the past 2 months or so, really intensely on it, and it's going to shake up the tactical game that you're used to from a Civilization game. It's going to be really exciting.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's so many parts. I'm really excited about the quest system. Also, we have a cool expansion on the idea of espionage and covert operations that we haven't really shown yet. So that's a system that I'm particularly excited about.
For me, it would be a choice between either the technologies, which represent like the horizons of science and sci-fi, but that and the alien world, like the planet, how much different the terrain and the new resources and how alien it feels, and then the alien life on it and how it's a living, breathing planet that will care about what you do to it, and that you kind of have to survive and figure out your place in. It's been a lot of fun to kind of get that to feel right.
Now, if you guys were going to align yourself with one of the factions, which of the factions would you align yourselves with?
I would be Supremacy. It's a lot of fun. The sort of units that you get with the robotic faction. That's kind of my favorite so far.
I don't want to steal your thunder here, Dave. I would go with Harmony. You guys haven't seen this yet, but some of the coolest units are these aliens that you get to build yourself as the player, and it's awesome. Sometimes we're in the concept art meetings, and we're like, we're going to put that in a Civ game, and that's like, it's so wild, like the stuff that you can do with the Harmony. Yeah.
Well, that's easy, because I was going to choose Purity.
Oh, this is perfect, man. We got all of them. Yeah.
They're the most, I think they're the most recognizable, and also, in my mind, kind of makes it the most interesting, because it really is like humanity confronted with an awesome strangeness.
Yeah.
Plus, their attitude is generally to meet any problem with overwhelming force, which I find very satisfying on a very basic level. Yeah, more guns, more armor is the answer to all our problems.
It's kind of cool that your team is very balanced on the three, that's for sure.
I feel like we've got a lot to chew on. But I'm really excited to see what else you guys are going to put out. Is there going to be more stuff in the coming weeks?
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of news coming out. We're doing interviews all day today, so a lot of the press will be giving you guys more information and stuff too. So.